I'm standing here right now in the town of Belleoram for the first time in my life, and it is absolutely breathtaking. Back in 2003, 2004, I lived in Toronto and I was studying audio engineering, and I was getting close to completion, and I was thinking about what I wanted to do when I finished the course and who I'd want to work for, or if I was going to start my own thing or whatever. I started looking into recording studios in Newfoundland, and I stumbled upon the town of Belleoram because Sim Savory from Sim and I had his studio here. This is where he's from, and I'm actually standing in Belleoram right now, by the way. Just a little side note there. But Sim had a studio back then, and it was pretty famous, but I didn't know it because I was still pretty much a kid at that time. But I remember like looking into the town of Belleoram, just kind of, I never knew about it, didn't know where it was on a map, didn't know much about it at all. So I started researching it, and then kind of ever since then became mildly obsessed with Belleoram. And it took me 20 more years to get here, but I'm standing here right now in the town of Belleoram for the first time in my life, and it is absolutely breathtaking. Again, I've been saying that a lot lately, but this place is, you know, there's a reason why I became obsessed with it, looking at pictures of it just from the internet. But actually standing here, like the pictures never seem to do places justice. This is another one of those examples where it's even more beautiful than the pictures made it look to be. So talking about Sim Savory, I just brought him up, talking about why I even learned about Belleoram. Sim and I was the group Sim and I, right? Sim Savory from here in Belleoram, and Bud from, I can't remember which town it is, but it's somewhere down around the south coast as well. Super famous for the Lumber Song, Music and Friends. There's a bunch. I mean, they're a classic Newfoundland group. But this is Sim's hometown, right? Bud Davidge still going, as I said, still with Shanneyganock a lot, so you can catch him from time to time. Basically, I think every time I've seen Shanneyganock in the last 3 or 4 years, but join them for at least 1 or 2 songs.
Modern, I suppose, that's the cause, 'cause Christmas is not like it was.
Small town, of course, like so many of these coastal communities that dot the whole island, really. About 350 people, I believe. It has a rich fishing history, so it's kind of like rode the waves of ups and downs over the centuries for, you know, that go along with the fishing industry. Hit really hard, of course, in 1992 when the cod moratorium took effect, and then in the early 2000s when people started talking about aquaculture. That is the coast of bays, Canagra Peninsula, Bay d'Espoir. The whole south coast, as far as I'm aware, is really benefiting from aquaculture. Now, I don't know enough about aquaculture to tell you anything one way or the other, but what I can say is when I was in Belleoram, I could tell that there was something good happening. There was people everywhere. I'm not talking about like Times Square people everywhere, but for a town of 350 people in the middle of March on a, you know, okay day, but not a particularly nice day weather-wise, there was people all over the place. You know, sometimes there's like groups of people just sort of hanging around, maybe working on a boat or something. You can hear it in the background of some of my video here. People just doing work on their properties or whatever. There's people hanging around, just buddies that seem to be like just hanging around at lunchtime. There's people walking, driving, just all over the place. It was really, really cool to see because you don't always know what you're going to bump into in these little towns. Are people prospering? Are they doing well? Right? In October, when I was on the Bay Verte Peninsula, when we went up to Lassie, I kind of said the same thing. Like, there was new cars everywhere. There was, very well kept houses. And it's not like I'm judging communities by how well you keep your houses, but if you are renovating and buying new vehicles and things like that, you probably have some money. Really refreshing to see, because all you've been hearing in my lifetime was how fishermen, fisher people, fisher persons have been struggling so much. The ups and downs of the fishery has been pretty much on a down for the last 40 years, really, with some exceptions, here and there, but really nice to see in Belleoram just human activity, people out doing stuff. I don't need to tell you too much about the beauty of the town itself. You can see that in the footage here. This was a remarkably beautiful town. There's a few different names for the region, as I mentioned just a moment ago. The Canagra Peninsula, there's Bay d'Espoir, which is like in the area but a little further north. Probably if you're in Belleoram or Harbour Breton, you might consider it kind of far from you, but just generally, broadly speaking, it's in the same part of south central Newfoundland. Some of the landscape is very like Nordic, right? Fjords, they call it, I've seen it called fjord country. And if you go to like Western Brook Pond in Grossmorn, the fjords that you see there are the kind of like prototypical fjords, if you know anything about them at all. What you probably envision with fjords is these scooping mountains that kind of go back into the water. In the south coast, in the Canagra Peninsula, Belleoram, Harbour Breton, these places where what you're seeing are probably fjords, and please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong about that. If you're watching this and you know what I'm talking about and they're not fjords, let me know, because I don't know. But it's really cool to see the landscape. It's beautiful. And Belleoram is kind of like a town that's on the base of a fjord, if it is a fjord. So you can see from the footage, you don't need me to talk about it any more than I'm already talking about it. It is a beautiful town, and it's just majestic, and there's not much that needs to be said about it. Just watch. Last point I want to make here is kind of a long one because it's important. It's about road access to the region in general, Belleoram specifically. So let me just talk about that a little bit here. So at first I didn't even know if a road actually came in here, if it was like a ferry-only community, because we're on the south coast, there's a lot of those. But there is a road that comes in, so when I found out there was a road, I was kind of concerned about what kind of condition it would be in, but it was excellent. The whole way down from the Trans-Canada Highway.
Highway 360 on a map, it looks pretty much north to south straight down, but just assume that it's going to still be windy because it's Newfoundland. But wow, it's actual straight roads in Newfoundland, I guess. Just have some peace of mind to know that if you do decide to come down this highway, the road is fantastic. It's beautiful. Where I am right now is a little bit blah, but the closer you get to Harbour Breton, the landscape changes, and it is amazing. There's one hill heading into Belleoram, actually. I had dreams, I wouldn't call them nightmares, but there are dreams that made me feel uneasy, where I'm in a vehicle driving up a hill and it gets steeper and steeper and I keep going up and up and I don't really ever get to the top. There was a hill like this heading into Belleoram, and it was more of an optical illusion than anything, because you come down a hill when you see the hill in front of you. But what an amazing drive that was. But yeah, this highway is almost worth the trip down to Harbour Breton on its own. But Harbour Breton is definitely, and Belleoram and Galtas and all these different places are definitely worth visiting. Anyway, don't just come and take the road and take it back out just for the sake of it.
driving into Belleoram is surprisingly smooth. The road was, for the most part, really good. Highway 360 is the main highway, takes you down all the way to Harbor Breton. You'll detour, I believe it's 361, not positive, and then you definitely take 363 once you get so far. That brings you right into Belleoram.
So I just wanted to let you know, like, if you're hesitant to come down here because it's a remote highway, and it is, you don't have, as long as you know you can trust your vehicle, you're not going to have to worry too much about the road itself, because yeah, it's not perfect. There are areas where there are some potholes, and going into Belleoram there was a couple of areas where it was a little bit rough, but for the most part, even going in there, it was smooth. It looked like the roads have been fairly recently done, and even the paint on the roads, it's wild to me, because you drive around St. John's this time of year, for whatever reason the paint never lasts through the winter, and yeah, I know there's more traffic on the roads and stuff, but like the paint on the roads here is perfectly visible. In St. John's, you gotta kind of guess where your lane is, literally, you know, pick your lane.
Like, I'm really surprised with how good of condition the roads were for the most part. There've been a few exceptions, like in Conn River, for example. Roads were really bad headed into Conn River, but I saw construction crews actually doing work, I think, on the roads. I'm not sure, but there's a lot of construction workers working on something. But the road's been really good. Don't let that be a barrier. I mean, it's still technically winter, and there was a big snowstorm about a week ago, but the roads were clear. They're damp because the snow's melting. It's +3, +4 degrees every day. But don't worry about the roads. Make your way down here because it's amazing.